All right. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning also to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, and I am joined by.
Jerome Bourgeois, co-creator, co-founder of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. How's everything, man? How you been? Getting
Good,
ready
good,
for
good, good.
Halloween?
Yes, yes, yes. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying your weekend. You guys have some fun festivities in place for Halloween. I do have some couple of announcements in that regard, but I'll announce them a little later regarding this weekend and beyond as well. But before we do that, let's just get into some minutes. But first off, thanks so much for joining us wherever you're watching from for this episode of This Week in Review, the show that we do once a week, typically on Saturday, just to cover some of the news bits that have made the rounds in the entertainment industry. And we're on episode what at this point, Jerome? Before I hop into the minutes.
I think we are on. Let me just double check. I think we're in 30. I think it's 36. Let me just double check. And let's see. Yep, we are on. Yeah, 36.
All right, excellent, excellent.
Episode 36.
36, going strong and continuing onwards. All right, so now for those of you that are watching live, thanks, as I said, for joining us. But if you are watching the show as an archive episode, just know that you can also be a part of that conversation by using that hashtag TWnRMNSU. So that's This Week in Review, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And also know that if you enjoy much of the content that we do here, and you want to, play a role in helping to, make sure that that content continues. We also have Patreon as well. So you can be a Patreon supporter, and you can find a link just down below for where you can find out about some of the perks that we have in place if you want to join us as a Patreon supporter. And with that being said, as always, I want to also give a shout out to our Patreon supporters. I want to give a shout out to Jerome Bourgeois. So shout out to Joel.
Shout out, sis.
Shout
in
out
South
indeed.
Korea.
So
we got international fans all over the place. Yep. All right.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so let's hop into our news stories that made the rounds. First off, we want to hop over to the world of action, to John Wick universe. And there was news this week that actress Ana de Armas will star in a spinoff of John Wick known as Ballerina. With this story, Jerome, and talking about how expansive the John Wick franchise has gotten, what are your thoughts of what they're doing with this? Because I mean, for those of you that have been keeping track of the John Wick franchise, this is basically going to be spun off of, and I'll pull up the picture here, spun off of, I guess you can say kind of a brief segment that we had in part 3, in which we were exposed to like the world of like ballerinas that we were shown, and how that plays into like the assassins world. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do with it. But what are your thoughts on it?
I feel like almost every week we have like a John Wick story.
Indeed, yeah, no.
I mean, they're probably almost done, or maybe done with chapter 4, and they're doing chapter 5, and they're probably gonna do a 6th one. And then we already report how they're doing the series, the prequel series, the Continental. And then when I heard about this, right, I'm like, oh my goodness, man! It's like they are really milking it. But with Ballerina, but I mean, no, I mean this. I think it could be interesting. If they have some, also if they connected to the John Wick world really well, and maybe you just see that portion of it. And like I said, there's so many different assassins that have different ways of operating, and they're trained differently, and they have different methods of killing people. It'll be interesting seeing, I guess, that take on it. The only thing for me is like, they're really gonna have to make this interesting, and I feel like if they can connect it also well to John Wick, and if there's some sort of cross pollination, to me it'll probably be a little more interesting. The only reason I say that is because I just feel like, I mean, I have nothing against like these female assassin movies because I love them, but I'm just like, I just feel like the plot sounds so like recycled. It's like, oh, people killed your parents. Now we're gonna. I mean, you know, I mean, I guess you got to just go in there expecting, hey, a whole bunch of action or whatever, and just make sure that's really on point. But I'm just like, I don't know. I just kind of wish they would, some of these action movies, maybe like if you're gonna do an assassin movie, like really put a spin on it. But I mean, I guess because it's, and because like I said, even the female perspective, I mean, that's been done before several times already. Like there's been some great movies that have done that. So if they're gonna add to that, I just hope they, if it's really gonna support the John Wick universe somehow, and like expand on that, and there's some sort of, like I said, interaction or connection. Maybe she'll pop up in the next John Wick movies or something like that. I don't know. Maybe it might be a little more interesting, but I'll just wait and see.
No, I hear you. I guess with me, and this is a picture, by the way, that you saw with de Armas. And she's a
God, Armas,
rising
yeah.
star. Like she's been in quite a bit, and she's set to star in quite a few other projects as well. So I mean, it makes sense, that she will be offered, more, roles based on, what she has coming. Because according to the story that we have exclusively from Deadline, she has quite a few things set up at this point. According to the article, she is, let's see, she's currently she's in post production for the Netflix and Russo brothers action pick, $200 million action pick, by the way, The Gray Man. And she's also going to be in that Marilyn Monroe biopic, Blonde. So I mean, she's a rising star, and it would make sense that there are a lot of studios that, when you have rising stars, which will, we've seen time and time again, not just in front of the camera, but even behind the camera, that, there's always that desire to secure those stars before,
They get too expensive.
yeah, exactly, before they get too expensive. So, because I mean, if you can, if we're talking about Anna here, like if we're able to develop a franchise here, then you can have her in place for an entire franchise, and already, if you're thinking financially, already have a set price of what, that would look like over the span of a couple installments, versus, down the line, when that star is way, way brighter, it may, just as you said, it may be too expensive to do so, or to even to have her star in it. So
But I do like her. I do like her as an actress. Like, I mean, she was good in Knives Out and War Dogs. I really like that one. And even the new James Bond film was No Time to Die. So no, I look forward to her projects. I'm just curious to see, like, I just hope they really need to add some sort of unique, like, spin on this female assassin, like, type of movie, because I just feel like it's been done so many times now. It's like, I just plot wise, I just hope there's more than just a revenge thriller, because it's been done so many times. But I don't know. I mean, that's just my perspective.
no, I hear you. I guess my only thought behind that is, I know you were mentioning a little earlier of how they would kind of still have it in the John Wick universe, and according to the story, there it hasn't been confirmed at this point, but the idea is that they might throw in Angelica Houston in there, just as like a quick cameo, or Keanu Reeves. But here's the thing, though, like, I feel, in order to allow uh, this uh, uh, this spinoff franchise to have its own identity, I feel it will be very incumbent upon them to try to not, to try to establish an identity for themselves, and to not be too attached to John Wick. They can reference, a lot of those events, and they can reference those characters, but I feel like it would do a disservice to that franchise if they're trying to, just like you said, trying to establish a identity of their own, if they're trying too hard to attach themselves to something else. Like a good example that I can think of with that is, and I think
Hobbs and
in
Shaw? Oh no, no, that actually
no,
is.
not necessarily Hobbs and Shaw. I feel like that was separate enough. I would say if I'm thinking of like TV, for example, like Agents of Shield, where like everything was like so
Yeah.
intertwined, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like they were relying too much on trying to connect it. Where I feel like it was enough just to throw a reference to something. Like you didn't
Well,
have
probably because nobody really wanted to watch Agents of Shield,
that's the
so
problem.
they
See,
had
that's
to
the
they had
problem.
to they had to promote it. I mean, I
But I
enjoyed
feel
the
that's
show,
the
but I was like,
danger.
I didn't need it. It's unnecessary. It was
But I
like,
feel that's the danger that you can run with this franchise is if you
yeah,
try to
well,
do too much in that regard, then people are gonna be like, okay, so why don't you just put John Wick in there then? Like,
well, that's
versus
why I'm like, I don't even know why they're doing this movie, but hey,
I
they
mean, I'm
keep
interested.
impressing me.
It seemed like when they introduced that element into the film, it seemed like an interesting enough element that I feel you could, try to develop a story out of. But again, I feel like in order to do that, you have to somehow provide its identity of its own, and by moving it away enough from John Wick, I feel like it will have an opportunity to do that. Because you could say the same thing about Mandalorian too, where if
Yeah,
we
yeah.
had a reference of Star Wars, of not Star, what is it, Skywalkers, like every single episode, or always had a Skywalker popping in and out, like I feel like it would take away from the Mandalorian. So, um,
But they did have, I mean, they brought in Boba Fett and a lot of other characters. I mean, so they did like connect enough, but yeah, he was his own story, but that's true.
yeah, yeah.
It was a totally different, yeah, section or portion of the Star Wars world.
Universe, yeah.
That's what you mean. But yeah, it wasn't just a Skywalker. Yeah, that's true. But they did have a lot of cameos. So I'm just saying.
They did. They did. They
So
had some
that
fan
helps. No,
service in there.
they can't say that's really,
But
good enough.
initially, I know later, we've gotten a lot of fan service in that regard, but at least initially, like we didn't have movie characters pop up in the very, if I recall, and I could be wrong, I'll go back and look, that they had them pop up in that very first episode. Like we were given enough breath with our with the Mandalorian
Yeah,
where
but I mean, okay, Baby Yoda is not Yoda, but I mean,
tomato.
if it was a totally different creature, then I'd agree with you. But there's a reason why they made him look like a Baby Yoda, because people know who Yoda. I'm just saying, like, that was purposely done. So don't tell me that like there's no connection. But anyway,
Tomato. But moving on to our next
anyway,
story. We have some news. Of course, we can't do an episode of This Week in Review and not, at some point run into some superhero stories, or superhero-esque, if you will. But this week, we got news that Bill Murray would be appearing in the upcoming Ant-Man sequel known as Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. He was asked, in the interview, and mind you, this is just me paraphrasing, but we'll get into the specifics of it, of talking about being in this franchise. And he kind of said it in passing of, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to be in a Marvel film, and it's not really my thing, but I'm doing it because I like the director, and referencing Peyton Reed. But at this point, according to the story, there's not there are no details regarding what character he's going to play, which throws many fans like ourselves of that love the MCU, of who he could possibly play. But if any of his statements are anything to go by, it's probably going to be in my opinion, and I'd love to know your thoughts too, Jerome, that it's probably just going to be a throwaway. They may just actually have him play himself. Like he may just be a cameo, maybe an
it might be a
interview that
joke,
he's
a
Bill
play on
Murray in the
Groundhog Day. It might be
MCU.
a joke on
Or that.
because
Or
time
that.
loop.
Or that. But yeah, like what are your thoughts on who it might be?
Yeah, well, based on what he's saying in there, he's like he doesn't want to do this experience again. Which I don't. To me, when I hear that, it's like people say crap like that all the time. It's like, when they get paid or they like the experience. I mean, money changes things too. But I don't know. It sounds like it's a cameo role. I think that would be funny if they made it like, because if obviously this is gonna have to do with multiverses and time travel or whatever. They have Kang as the villain. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a joke they're playing, they're making fun of like Groundhog Day or something. So that would be hilarious if they did do that. If not, I mean, or maybe he just says he's a character that says something that kind of references that a little bit, because that's the only reason I would think he would be in this movie, if he's gonna play a throwaway role. Character wise, I mean, I don't, for a small character, I mean, unless he's like a variant of Michael Douglas's character, like
Yeah, that's a thought.
it could be like a variant, of Hank Pym. That's like, hey, in this other universe, I couldn't get through the day or something or whatever. I have to keep going through the same. I don't know. It could be some joke like that. But yeah, hey, this is what happens. Marvel becomes when these movies become really successful and they get critical acclaim. Eventually, people who maybe weren't fans originally or whatever, for whatever reason, they jump on board because they're like, yeah, I wanna be in a Marvel movie now. Like they see the value, they see that it's fun and they're successful and they're popular and people like them and they keep going to see them. So anyone criticizing, or I'm not saying he did, but like, or anyone who wasn't as really motivated or interested in being playing a role in one of these films, usually eventually will have a change of heart when they get the opportunity, or they just see how how it's become part of the zeitgeist and just normal. It's become the movie going experience, at least theatrically. So
Yeah, I hear you. So, I mean,
is.
to go into more specifics about, what he had been commenting and saying, and this is, directed from an interview that was published on October 26th, according to the sources, is from FAS, otherwise known as a German outlet. And I apologize if I'm butchering it, but Frankenfurter, Allgemeine Zeitung, he had a conversation with them regarding Wes Anderson's latest film, The French Dispatch, and in that story, he basically went into, when he was being asked about working with various directors, Anderson, Coppola, Jarmusch, and others.
Jarmusch, yeah.
He basically, again, butchering, apologies. But he, in answering that question about working with various filmmakers, he basically just said it just like haphazardly. Like he said, recently I made a Marvel movie, according to his exact quotes. I probably won't tell you, but never mind in terms of like talking about what the specifics are of it. But he goes further into saying, people were quite surprised why I decided on such a project. And, but for me, the thing was quite clear. I got to know the director, again, talking about, Peyton Reed, and really liked him very much. He was funny, humble, everything you want in a director. But, when he was pressed further about that idea of, continuing onward in the MCU, he said, let's put it this way. The director's a good guy, and I've at least tried out what it's like to shoot a Marvel movie. But I don't think I need that experience a second time, like you were saying.
But that's also kind of a joke to me, because he was in 2 Ghostbuster films. It's like, what do you think the Ghostbuster? I mean,
yeah, and I mean,
those special effects were like way worse than those are classic movies. But
and I mean, I get it to a degree, but at the same time, I guess what I would argue with what you're saying is that, yeah, he for sure did that sequel. He did it earlier in his career, and maybe in the experience of doing sequels, it kind of put a bitter taste in his mouth of potentially doing additional installments of a film that he wants to do. Because I mean, I know he does so many indies, recently, in this span of his career.
yeah.
And so maybe, in that prior experience of doing sequels, he's like, nah, I think I'll just stick with, I like.
I'm not even talking about sequels. I'm just talking about like the type of film, like how it's a sci-fi comedy. I'm just saying that's a more.
We also have Charlie's Angels too. I mean,
they're more like a goofy sci-fi. I mean, they're cool, but it's like, I'm like, he's done that genre, so it's not like it's new. That's what I'm just saying. It's not like, oh, I'm a independent film actor who doesn't do fluff or what. You know what I'm saying? And I know, some people act like that. I'm not saying he is, but I just think it's funny because I'm like, he was in those movies. I mean, come on, like it's not really that big of a stretch for him to do this. So
I hear you. I hear you.
because of that. And now if he was never, if someone like Daniel Day-Lewis, like I don't think he's been in any big sci-fi movie. I don't remember him being anything like that. So that would surprise me. I'll be like, okay, so, or maybe even Meryl Streep, even though Meryl Streep has done like some musicals but so that's how I'm looking at it. But anyway, move on.
Indeed, I hear you, man. Like, I hear where where you're coming from. Like I said, it'll just be interesting to see what that role is that he ends up playing. I know a little while back we were talking about Russell Crowe, and I'm gonna pat myself on the back that I ended up guessing, what that character was, or at least I was.
You didn't get the exact character, but you were like, was it?
I was in the wheelhouse. I was like, oh, he has to be playing a god of some sort. Like,
okay, well, yeah,
he wouldn't hop in there and like do something else. Like, no, because I remember, and I will bring that video next time, guys.
No,
like,
no, but like the specific character, I know.
I will bring the receipts as it will.
Yeah. That's good.
But no, switching gears from one superhero story to another. I know we were just talking about this Marvel story. Switching to a story that deals with the world of DC. This week there was also news that actor Brendan Fraser will be hopping onto the Batgirl film. And he will be hopping into a villainous role. So he will be hopping into the role of a DC villain known as Firefly. So, I know, Jerome, you were telling me that, you're not particularly well versed, with this villain, but just the idea of having Fraser, have a resurgence. And I want to get into that too. Having a resurgence in having this role, what are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, we've never seen him that I can think of. Like I haven't seen him in a whole bunch of projects where he is in that villainous role. A lot of times we're accustomed to seeing him in that heroic role.
Yeah, I mean, this might be his first villain bad guy role. I mean, there might have been something else, but I don't remember. No, I'm glad that he's doing something different. Like I like when actors do stuff like this. It's like I feel the same way about Will Smith. I want to see Will Smith play a bad guy one day. It would be interesting. Not an anti-hero. But yeah, that's great. I like when people challenge themselves. Why not? It's it's something different. And it can look at it. He can get viewed in a different light. And he'll probably get different. Actually, the perfect example would be like John Travolta, because remember John Travolta was like Saturday Night Fever, Grease, that sort of thing, dancing around, doing that. And then look who's talking. Then after Pulp Fiction, man, he's doing all these action movies, and he played a bad guy like I think he's played a bad guy like 3 times or something. I'm like,
and in one of a fun action movie that we'll get into later for one of our stories. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's another reason I was thinking about it. But I'm just saying, like, he's a perfect example of like someone probably you wouldn't think of, like, oh wow, this guy can totally do these bad guy roles really well, and then that's what he was known for. I'm not saying that Brendan Fraser has to keep playing bad guy, villainous roles, but it's good to do something different and show if you have the range, show that you have that type of range. And yeah, I mean, this villain, I mean, I'm not as familiar with him, but he seems like a mix of kind of like Pyro and I don't know, I guess Yellow Jacket kind of. Well, you can't shrink though. But no, it's interesting. I mean, it's a interesting mix of tech, I guess, that he'll be using. But yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that surprised me is kind of to the side of this. I thought that I guess I didn't read all the articles before. I thought that the Commissioner Gordon that was going to be her father was going to be Jeffrey Wright, like in the Batman movie or the series. And I was like, I thought specifically because of obviously the cast is Afro Latina, to play Batgirl in Dominican. I was like, oh, okay, they probably were trying to do that. But that kind of shocked me that this is in like the movieverse universe. And to that end, it's like, that's why I was kind of like surprised. I'm like, all right, I guess what surprised me is like, if they're doing that, like you would think they would have a theatrical run for this movie, but I guess they were really trying to just get more subscribers do it on HBO Max, or maybe they're concerned because of some of the other female-based movies didn't do as well. I mean, except with the exception of Wonder Woman. I don't know. I still think you should give it a chance, but they should give it a chance theatrically. But yeah, that's a little bit weird to me. But I'm looking forward to it. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, I agree with you in that it definitely is weird that this is not going to act as a theatrical, release. And just as you said, according to the story, it will fall within the universe established by Zack Snyder, what we have with Man of Steel and Justice League and all those things. And it will have the she will be the daughter of J.K. Simmons iteration of Jim Gordon. But going into hopping into just the idea of Brendan Fraser, about what, let's see, and it's hard to believe it's been this long, but what, 20 plus years ago, there was a time where Brendan Fraser was everywhere. Like he was in all types of big blockbuster films, and for a period there, he wasn't seen and he wasn't being featured, and he wasn't like the leading man or the lead actor in a lot of projects. So it's always awesome to see a lot of actors, and I mean, you brought up John Travolta as a great example where they see a resurgence. And it's not to say that he hasn't been doing anything. He has still been working, but it's great to kind of in a project like this to see him in the forefront, in a role. And I mean, he's been in other things, and I think you could probably say that his prior portrayal of a character in a DC character, probably help with that, with the prior relationship. Because for those of you, that are not aware, Brendan Fraser is also a part of the TV show Doom Patrol, which is also on HBO Max. So he's not, a stranger to, the DC universe, but it's still great to see him, as I said, in this role, and to see what he can do with it. It's a character who is pretty grounded, and to have it in this film, I feel like it gives a film an opportunity to do something really cool with the character and not really have to worry about. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm picturing that there's going to be some element of visual effects, but based on what his skill set is and how his abilities work and what he can do and what he's capable of, a great deal of that could be done practically. So if you're thinking of like the financial element of how much it would take to put this movie together, it would be not only a unique character to do, but it could also be a character that's doable if you're really on a set budget of what you're trying to accomplish. So do you have any additional thoughts before we move on to the next story, Jerome?
Yeah, I'd say another good example is like Heath Ledger too. Like nobody, I mean, I think most people would have said they didn't think he would play the Joker well, and he killed it. So, and rest in peace, Heath Ledger. But yeah, there's when actors take risks and they challenge themselves, it doesn't always work out well, but there's a lot of great performances and new careers that get spawned out of that. So I'm glad that he's doing that. And I mean, and I think also Brendan Fraser probably wanted to switch up the types of roles and projects that he works on, because I mean he's working with he's worked on Steven Soderbergh's crime drama No Sudden Move, Danny Boyle's Trust. He's going to be in Darren Aronofsky's next film, The Whale. And then also Scorsese's next movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, with Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro. So to me, it sounds like he probably specifically was trying to just work with, different filmmakers and be in different roles in different types of movies, as opposed to a lot of those, big budget movies, those like the Mummy franchise or George of the Jungle, whatever, like he probably was kind of, I bet you he felt a little bit, I mean, I don't know for sure, but to me, it sounds like he probably felt more like stuck and maybe typecast too much, and probably wanted to diversify but he was also in Crash, and he was pretty good in that. And that was different. So it's always good to see actors challenge themselves. Like I said, I feel like more big stars should do that. I look forward to them doing that. But you know, we'll
Sure.
see. Batgirl should be interesting.
It shall. It shall. So, all right. So, switching to the next story, it involves, I guess, another HBO series. So,
Yep.
Sex and the City with the revamp that they're doing. There was a story regarding it becoming, as you said, more diverse and addressing race. So, Jerome, you want to hop on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to touch on this a little bit because like the spinoff that they're doing is called And Just Like That. It's also going to star a new generation of cast members. So Nicole Ari Parker, Sarah Ramirez, Sarita Chowdhury, and Kieran Pittman. And Parker, she was talking about how, last time obviously there weren't, you know, but basically she's excited to be part of something that's different for them. This is according to Variety. She's like, we can talk about the elephant in the room that there were no fully fleshed out characters of color, but now here's the four of us. We're real people, and they've been great to work with. And some of our storylines deal with race and deal with real experiences. It's New York City. And then she goes on, she's like, we're grown ass women, so we know how to keep it sexy. It's piping hot. Okay, so just to like preface it, like I was a big fan of the series. I felt like you had Sex in the City, it came out first, get the female's perspective, dating, relationships, all that sort of thing, and then you had Entourage, which is like the male version. I'm not gonna lie, of course it's a show, but from a guy's perspective, it's kind of it's somewhat educational. It's good to see like the female's perspective. So I enjoyed the show and even the movies. I know some people who maybe weren't fans didn't enjoy them as much, but I did. But I will say the elephant in the room was like, even with the whole relationship storylines and all that sort of thing, and just being in New York City, it is true that it was all white cast. I mean, they had some people of color come in and out, but they weren't main characters. So I just feel like for such an iconic series that a lot of females watch and that's about dating or whatever, it's good that they're adding they're adding a diverse cast. I mean, you're adding a Latina, you're adding two African American females and Indian woman, and they're all like in their older. I mean, I think they're all going to be like probably like their 40s or and older. So I mean, I think that's good, like getting those perspectives, and I'm glad that they're updating, the show that way, and showing those perspectives, because those conversations weren't really in the show as much as, there were some episodes I think that kind of centered a little bit, but it really wasn't on, focusing on other ethnicities and race like that obviously they can affect. That affects like dating and the relationships that you're in, or even just navigating that within, and specifically within New York. Because it is kind of laughable that you have a show set in New York City and you're only focusing on 4 white women, even though the character is really interesting and you got to see like more about class. It was more about classism and I guess this what's acceptable or not acceptable for how women should act or whatever, and that debate ensued throughout the show. But like I said, the element of race and ethnicity and culture and diversity was never really discussed in that, and I'm glad that they're going to address it in this new spinoff. So I'm definitely going to check it out. So I know you're not the biggest fan of Sex and the City, but hey, I just we gotta throw that one in there.
Now I hear what you're saying. And for any IP, like I guess it for any IP like that, it's good to have a conversation like that being made, especially in the context of the modern context that we have now, with many of the things that we have going on right now with Black Lives Matter and various other issues of that nature. So, whether I am well versed in it or not, it's always great to have that conversation with race, with diversity, and to make sure that what you're showing on the screen is um, is paralleling what people are seeing when they step foot out the door. So in any context, any effort to show that and to make a point about having that at the forefront is always a good thing. So if that is what the goal is and what the intention is, then hey, I think that's awesome. But did you have any other final thoughts before we hopped into our next story?
No, that was pretty much my take on it. But I just thought it was important that people know that it's not just going to be just a continuation of the same show. So they're definitely updating with the times, and I think that's I give HBO credit for doing that. And I was also hearing online that maybe, I don't know if it's official, but I'm hearing that maybe Entourage might come back. That would be great seeing that, and that would totally be different too, because of the whole Me Too movement and all that, and how Hollywood is now. So that'd be exciting to see also. But anyway, but no, yeah, looking forward to that.
Cool. So this week, another story that made the rounds was a story surrounding Facebook and um, uh, a project known only as the An Ugly Truth. So this week, Facebook actually warned the producers against the TV adaptation of it. Regarding proceeding records. I can talk today. Regarding proceeding recklessly in their adaptation of this story. So, Jerome, I'll punt it over to you first, and then I'm going to share my thoughts to wrap up. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was just interesting because, I mean, like, look, if you're a $1 billion company, you're out there, like, people are gonna make stories about you, whatever. And I really like The Social Network, even though I know they didn't have as much of an, Mark Zuckerberg, I don't think he had much of an issue with that, but I think maybe they didn't think everything in that movie was portrayed accurately, but I guess it wasn't as bad, or, of a
As egregious,
portrayal as maybe this this book.
allegedly.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, I don't think they sued them. I mean, you can check that out, look it up, but I don't, that was based, and that movie was based off of The Accidental Billionaires by Ben Mesrick. And but I'm saying that movie was really good. It was really interesting, and there are a lot of the elements and the themes in that film were, universal, and it was just a very unique story, and a story for our generation, for the, you could say, for this new generation that's growing up on social media, and how it can, affect all of our lives, and also just business in general. But this, I mean, like I said, I don't know all the specifics of this book. I haven't read it. And obviously with the news, we keep hearing all sorts of controversy coming out regarding Facebook, or, whatever. And I'm sure you guys can check the news and see what's going on. Even though, like, hey, I mean, I still think Facebook has done a lot of good, but, with the good also comes the bad if there isn't a check and balance. And, every big corporation has had to eventually been held accountable for, if there's issues that happen that maybe they didn't take care of internally, or maybe they didn't, just foresee, and then, they have to adjust. But I just find it funny, that, I mean, the thing is, I just find it funny that now, like, specifically for this show, they actually have an issue, and they're giving the producers a warning, and they have every right to. And if there's a certain, portrayal, or a certain, perspective that's going to be shown to the public in a movie or TV series, and you believe that there's false information in there, or it's not accurate, or for whatever reason, you have the right to sue. I mean, and that's what it seems like they're threatening if these producers go ahead and adapt this story, I guess, the way that it's originally intended in the book. And I guess they just want to be transparent ahead of time, be like, hey, you guys do this, like, there's gonna be a lawsuit. And, like, that comes with adapting, stories that are based on real companies and real people and that sort of thing. But it's what also kind of brings back into memory is, not exactly, but it kind of makes me think of The Interview. Like North Korea was mad and they hacked. And they were like, "Don't release the interview, or we're gonna there's gonna be some violence or whatever." I mean, it's not the same, but it's kind of like, it's like, come on, it's a movie. Hey, people are gonna believe what they want to believe. Everyone has freedom of speech, and that's the thing. It's like, yeah, you say something that maybe if it is incorrect, or if it's wrong, or if it's just straight up false, then it's like, yeah, there are going to be repercussions, especially if you go up against a big company. So I'm sure the producers are prepared for that. If they have to go to court, they'll go to court. But I'm like, I mean, there's tabloids. I mean, there's tabloids that have said all sorts of crazy crap about every celebrity and almost everyone every day. It's like, I think it is ridiculous after a while, but it's like,
But there have been instances though, to speak on that. There have been instances though where celebrities have said, like, it's gotten like too ridiculous, they've popped in and said, "Hey, like
and they can sue. They have every right to sue.
Started suing. Yeah, like
I have no problem with them suing. Whatever. It's like, if they feel like it's harmful, if it's not true, the stuff that they're being portrayed in a negative light that's not accurate or whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, those are the consequences of, if you put something out there, you better make sure it's pretty accurate. But at the same time, that doesn't always mean that that's the case. It could also just be, hey, we don't like that this is coming out, or whatever is being highlighted. So we have a lot of money and unlimited lawyers. We'll try and squash you legally. And it's funny to see big company. I mean, I don't know how much money anonymous content has in backing to like go to court for this type of situation. But I like people. I like people standing for their principles, and if they think something is wrong, or they think something is libel or slander, and they defend it. But like I said, I think people also gotta it's also interesting to just see these perspectives and stories, and then you can make your own decision. But I will say, it is kind of ironic how Facebook is having an issue with this, but they've helped spread so many lies for political. I mean, look at it's a fact though. Look at the election. There's been, I mean, look, you can look to see. This is why I mean, whatever. This is my opinion, whatever. But I mean, there's plenty of. You can go look at the research, the algorithms and everything that were helping people believe straight up political lies. Like, they didn't police that as well, and now they're trying to, or they're continuing to. But I'm just saying, like, it is ironic how when it comes to their own brand, I mean, it makes sense, but it's like, this is what people have been talking about, that how social media has been harmful, and specifically Facebook, in allowing these algorithms to just falsely put these false stories out that people are believing. And that's why we had, people meddle, that's how you have people believing these ridiculous stories that have no merit. And I just find it kind of ironic.
Yeah,
I'm not saying Facebook is a straight. I'm just saying, like, it's hard to police stuff regardless. Like, I get it, and I'm sure they had some issues, but it is kind of ironic that this is happening to Facebook, and this is what's happening, because I mean, they are. You can, however you want to look at it, they have been somewhat responsible for some of the a lot of the false narratives put out there on social media, and that's why they're dealing with all of these issues, in Congress and politically. But I think it's great that they show the story. What I think should really happen is Facebook maybe should have their own movie then. Show their own. Why not? Like, you can sue them too, but also have your own story. Why not? It's like having a documentary. There's sometimes you get several documentaries. I can give you plenty of examples. Like, what is it? There's that dude, that Dinesh D'Souza. He made a whole documentary. I didn't watch it, but he made a whole documentary trying to make Obama look like he's like the devil or something. I mean, I don't think anyone watched it, but it's like, he put that out there. But there's also documentaries that showed more realistically what Obama did, or what his a different portrait. Like, there's different perspectives. You can't tell someone they can't make a documentary. But the thing is, if you don't have, or a movie, but if you don't have if it's based off of real people and real situations, you need to do your homework and do your research. And if you feel like that's strong enough and you have the credibility then I mean, you should defend it and just put it out there. I mean, I wouldn't worry. But that's where the whole legal aspect could be kind of terrible, because it's like, sometimes people can do that if they have enough money and resources, they'll just be like, hey, we just don't want this out there, so we're gonna we're gonna take you to court
Yeah.
until you have no more money to go to defend yourself, and then you can't release it. And so if that's I'm like I said, I'm not saying that's the case here. I don't know, but I'm saying like if that happens, like if that's the actual issue, if say that was the issue, like I would have a problem with that. If they're just defending their name and these are straight up lies, or just they're not accurate, or there's not the producers didn't do their research well enough, and it's just cherry picked, like that's what it's saying in the article, that some of these things are cherry picked accounts.
Yeah, some of the
then yeah, I mean, Facebook should sue them. So, but you gotta admit it is kind of ironic that this is happening.
No, I hear you. And to go into like the story that you're referencing, Jerome, this is from a Deadline. Is that the gentleman who is representing, is acting on behalf of Facebook, Matthew Rosengart. He put out the warning, and according to the article, it basically went as follows, in talking about the defamation lawsuit and bringing on a threat of the defamation lawsuit, as an initial matter. And this is quoted from the article: as an initial matter, Facebook obviously recognizes that it is a public figure and has great respect for, the First Amendment, the rights of journalists and film or television producers to publish stories about it. But he goes further to say, as you know, however, the First Amendment does not protect knowingly false statements or portrayals, or those made with reckless disregard for the truth, even about public figures. And then it goes into more stipulations about, the law and things of that nature. But kind of along the lines of what you were talking about, Jerome, just that idea of, yes, there are protections of being able, according to, that amendment. However, there also comes a point where, you have to make sure that what you're saying is truthful, and that it's not being done with complete disregard of, the facts. Yeah, I mean, this, just like you're saying, it is very ironic in terms of, how things have, played out with many of the things. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of, all those different factors. You guys can look it up, but just the idea of, I think we were talking about it a little bit before, of just that those checks and balances, and making sure that, there are tools in place to ensure that, people are being provided with, the facts, and that, different tools. And let's be honest, Facebook is a very useful tool. I mean, yeah, people use it for, fun and for leisure, but it is a tool to get out information, or say it can be a tool effective tool to be used to get out information. And it can be quite damaging if those facts are not, accurate. So,
and don't get it twisted. It's like
happens.
When I'm saying it's really social media in general, even though Facebook specifically has.
That's fair.
I mean, look, Twitter, Twitter took forever to like kick off, our 45.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm all for freedom of speech. I mean, I know we're not even trying to make this like a political show, but whatever. This is part of the article. I agree in this article, there's a limit to freedom of speech, and it's just ironic how like there's a limit when it's affecting you.
Calling foul, yeah.
But when people on your platform are abusing it, it's just business. It seems like it's just business. Let it keep going, and then okay, we'll let you keep abusing, and then finally we'll take our time to kick you off when a lot of damage is already done. That's what I think is just so ridiculous. And I wish these companies would if they were better at policing themselves with these ridiculous voices that are obviously false and have been spreading and been able to perpetuate a lot of their falsehoods because they're online. Like this would have never happened before. Like this, it was hard to do. Like there's a whole bunch of groups of people in this world that would never have been able to communicate like this if it weren't for Facebook or Twitter or whatever. So they're perpetuating that, and they're allowing that. So it's like, if you're going to allow these people to connect which can help a lot of people, because it's helped us. It's helped a lot of people. I know, you start groups, you can invite people, you can do, you can help build your business. I mean, there's a lot of good that comes from Facebook and Twitter and all these, like, and that's why I'm still on it. Like, I love what they're able to do. But the bad, you also got to look at what the bad part also, and that part needs to be put
checks
in
and
check.
balances.
And if you don't do it yourself, probably, guess what? The government's going to come in and make you do it. And that's what they're kind of in that process right now. And like, you can't not expect bad publicity or stories that come out, like, if you're not solving the problem or doing that. I mean, Amazon even had some issues too with like how they treated their employees and stuff like that. And like, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, and also they have their perspective. They say, hey, we pay our employees a good amount, but then some people are like, hey, you're making us work these ridiculous hours. And, some people had to, like, supposedly, whatever, had some do some ridiculous stuff to stay.
I mean, we could probably spend hours. We could dedicate a whole show probably to this topic. But that's that idea.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, it's just hilarious, and that this is what it takes. So it's like, hey, maybe more people should make movies like this, and you could hold people accountable. But it also shows the power of movies, power of film, power of media. You could be a big $1 billion company and you're selling products, whatever. But this is why what we do, media is so important. You can influence a lot of people if you make it. Like, a perfect example is the R. Kelly, surviving R. Kelly thing. You could tell me R. Kelly, wasn't. I mean, now he's in jail, but it's like,
yeah.
It took a documentary that you put all these girls together, and then now they looked at the case again. I mean, if that's what it takes, I guess that's what people got to do. But I'm like
I said, I
you need a documentary for everything. Is that what it takes? It seems like it does. At the end of the day,
it's just that idea of. I think we can both agree on this. Is that just that idea? Is that there needs, just like you were saying, there needs to be a checks and balances, because in an effort to ensure that happens. Because I mean, there are great things that social media has allowed people to be able to do, but there's some negative things too. So like, that has to be addressed.
And one last thing I'll say, just by reading this article, read the specifics, even if this is not true or whatever, it makes me want to watch it more, because I'm like, this is stuff that happened. I'm like, wow, I didn't even think about this. Like, this sounds like an interesting story. No wonder they're trying to make it. And they're making it a TV show. And it's like, hey, the most funny part about this whole situation is, by them making this threat and doing all, legal threat,
it brings more attention to it. Yeah.
I mean, it's getting more publicity. So there's going to be more hype to watch it. So, hey,
we will see. We'll see how it develops. We'll see how it develops, for sure. But to close off into, we do have some other announcements to get into, but at least for our story for this edition of This Week in Review, wanted to hop into a story regarding John Woo, the iconic action director. And he actually will be making a return after decades of being away here in the U.S. With the upcoming film called Silent Night. So according to the story that we have there for Silent Night, it's going to be a story. And let me see if I can pull it up really fast, because it sounds very, unless you want to, like, pluck out a pet, and then putting in a different loved one that you lose in there. It sounds very John Wickish, but it's going to be a basic story about a normal father who heads into the underworld to avenge his young son's death. It's going to be starring Joel Kinnaman at this point. I know that they're still in the process of bringing in, more of the ensemble to surround him, but there are producers in place. And you will have Capstone that will be overseeing it. But like I said, casting is still underway. Jerome, you hear about this news of John Woo making a return. All the iconic films and those iconic sequences that we remember from those said films, and to see him get back behind the lens and to do this project. What are your thoughts?
Well, don't get it twisted. I mean, he's been making some movies. It's just he went back to China. He was doing them. Right. He was doing Chinese films, so which is kind of weird. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he had some issues with the Hollywood system. I don't know, but I really liked what he did, and he brought to the game. Ever since it's funny. Like I was a big Van Damme fan, and then when I saw Hard Target, I was like, wow, this movie has some really interesting slow motion and all that. I was like, okay, cool. And then I saw who directed. I was like, okay, John Woo. And then I was like, it said he did Hard Boiled, The Killer. I started checking those out. I saw. Then eventually, the Broken Arrow came out, and then Face Off, and then Mission Impossible 2, and what he did. I didn't see Windtalkers, but Paycheck, that was all right, but yeah, his style though, like regardless if you don't like some of those movies or whatever, the action and how he directs it, like
Yeah,
it's so
it's such a
operatic and
signature.
dramatic,
Yeah.
and it's so, and like a lot of people, have been influenced by that. I mean, he's been influenced. I think Sam Peckinpah was who influenced him back in the day. Like the style, but it's still pretty unique. And the colors he used, the slow motion, the music, all of that, the doves. I mean, it's just pure John Woo. And to do that with to do that with such a violent action, I mean, some of these movies are ridiculously violent, but like and action packed, but they're done so well in operatic, it's such an operatic, balletic style. And like you could say all these John Wick movies or whatever. I mean, they don't do the slow motion as much, but still, I mean, I'm sure those guys have been influenced by John Woo too. I mean,
Yeah, those elements of like gung fu, I want to say, it.
I mean, he was like and he made. I mean, he pretty much made Chow Yun Fat a star. It seemed like most of his classics in Hong Kong. I mean, were John Woo films. I mean, not all of them, but like a lot of them. Some of these iconic ones. But anyway, what I think is interesting about the story, regardless, I mean, I'm glad to see him back because I was kind of like, yeah, where's John Woo? Like, how come he hasn't made like a big movie in America recently? This idea that this is all going to be silent with not a word of dialogue, I'm like,
I saw that. Yeah,
that's going to be interesting. If they pull it off well, then this movie is going to have to be used in like film schools to show like this is how you can make a movie. Make it interesting, tell the story visually, because that's what they always stress. They're like, like at NYU, like our first, we had to take a class called Sound Image, so it was just focusing on sounds. We just did told stories with sound. Then we did one, you could do like animation or you could do digital frame sequence. So it was like, you would just tell stories visually. I think, then the first actual short films you made were just done visually, and then eventually I think, and then you could put like music, I think, towards that. But they did that on purpose to be like, you need to focus on telling the story visually as much as possible. And then later on when you add dialogue that supports it, because there's a lot of films out there and there's a lot of movies that overdo stuff and it's just unnecessary. It's redundant. Like your dialogue shouldn't just be explaining everything or whatever. So that's what I mean, if it needs to explain some aspects of the film, okay, that you can't really tell visually, that's fine. But some people get in that trap of like, oh, let's just keep talking about what we're going to do, talk about exposition, blah, blah, blah. This was happening. Like, no, show it, so, and the dialogue should be it should be something that's organic that these characters would say. And also it tells you about those characters, but also it gives you a sense of how they feel, how they're interacting, how they're, where their arc, what their personality is. I mean, and also should be, it needs to be compelling as much as possible. Because, what is it? A picture is 1,000 words. I mean, it's true. Like, you should try an example. Just watch some of these movies and watch them silent and see if you can understand what's going on. That's actually a really good test to see like if a movie is, done well. Because if you're relying too much on the dialogue, then it's like to tell your whole story. Then it's showing you kind of you haven't really mastered that aspect because it is a visual medium. So that's why I'm interested to see like how this will turn out. I mean, like I said, I still got to watch those. Like A Quiet Place. I don't know. Did A Quiet Place have mainly? Was there any dialogue in all those movies? I still got to watch them. So you have to tell me.
So I mean, in the sequel there is, but there's very in the first one there's far fewer. I mean, I would have to look at it again. I want to say there really isn't in the first one, and they actually do add some because of a plot device that they added to how the lore of their world works. They were able to add a little bit into.
It was primarily silent,
and they had some flashbacks. So that's as far as I'll talk about that. But yeah, there's far more dialogue in the sequel, and there's pretty much none in the first movie.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to definitely check that out. But that's a good precedent to show, like, hey, you made a movie. There's a movie called A Quiet Place, and it made a lot of money. And they made a sequel, and people actually wanted to see it. So obviously, they must have told that story well visually, we have no dialogue. So that's why I'm very intrigued to see how this would work. I mean, if it's going to be an action movie or whatever, I could see that. But I'm like, oh my goodness. It just still boggles your mind to be like, boggles my mind to be like, huh, how much? I mean, if you're going to have a lot of, I mean, it's good to show action. Like, you know, there's a certain amount of action. It's like, okay, cool, I can watch. But after a while, you got to like spread it out because it can't just be, oh, we're shooting. After a while, it gets monotonous and tiring. And then you can do a lot of different things. There's only so much you can do. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious to see those scenes in between, I guess, the drama or maybe maybe this is going to be really an artistic type of film that has a lot of action. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see because it's like you can convey emotion, and it's true. You can convey emotion with like, you know, close-ups or just the actions and like, you know, a lot of times with these animated shorts, but they're shorts though. Don't get it twisted. It's not a feature. Like, you know, those Pixar, the previews, the ones that they have right before the film.
I know
Sometimes
what
like
you
there was
mean.
that one
Yeah,
Bow. I think that one called Bow. I don't think that had any dialogue or whatever. And like but also those are animated, so you can animate the emotion. So I mean, I feel like if you have actors, you really got to make sure those actors are emoting really well. But that's really good.
Hey,
that's what's got me
that
intrigued.
casting, that's
That's
why
what's got
casting is going to be key. You know,
but that's what's got
getting
me
the right
intrigued.
actors.
That's what's got me intrigued to be like, I want to see if they pull this off. And if you can, I mean, I know definitely visually and stylistically he could definitely pull that off, but it's going to be interesting to see how in between those, what are you going to show enough that's going to sustain the story and make me still interested to see the next scene and care about the characters. So I guess maybe that's also why they made it really simple too. So
Yeah. So I mean, I guess what I would
different.
say is, you know, jumping off of what you were saying, one thing that I feel will be very interesting to think about, because like when I think of John Woo, like yeah, I know we were naming like a lot of the films that he's done, especially, you know, U.S. films, and one thing that comes to mind for me is not just, you know, a signature style, but also an era. I know like we've talked about this before of how, you know, very much with certain actors, with certain directors, with certain projects, with certain IPs, you know, they become synonymous with an era. And, you know, thinking of those action films of like the 90s, like that's the era that I think of when I think of John Woo. And yes, he's done, you know, obviously he's done movies beyond the 2000s, but I'm just saying in regards to, you know, the films that, you know, I'm picturing for him, you know, he is synonymous to me, you know, on a subjective level. He's synonymous with the 90s. And, you know, you were just, you know, talking about that idea of having like the doves and all that, you know, as an aesthetic when, you know, we have those slow motion action scenes and all that. So that begs the question for me, you know, what would a John Woo look like now in the modern day versus, you know, what I have in my mind of what, you know, a John Wick film, I'm saying John Wick, John Woo, guys, a John Woo film. So what would a John Woo film look like, you know, in the modern era, you know, with again all the different types of films that we've had, and you know the the expansion of how we do our action films and how action films have changed. Like, what would that look like in the modern day? And then on top of that too, you know, we were just talking about the doves. Is it going to be a different animal now? Like, is it going to be a different, you know, aesthetic that he's going to use other than the dove, or is he going to stick with like the doves as like his calling card? So, you know, just I think those are the two things that I really find intriguing and fascinating. Is because I correlate a lot of the films that I know him for from that era of the 90s, and those films that came out in the 90s. What is it going to look like now, present day? And then also, you know, how is he still going to have his signature, but, you know, switch it up or change it up from what he had done before? Because like a good example of that is thinking of M. Night Shyamalan and thinking of how he very much had an aesthetic to his films of having a twist, and it actually became just like a meme, like a pop culture thing where, you know, if anyone like watches like Robot Chicken, you know, they a lot of times have a reoccurring like gag with that where they, they have M. Night Shyamalan and he always has that line like, "What a twist! What a twist! What a twist!" It's always like his line that he utilizes because he becomes synonymous just with that concept of putting twists in his films. And I mean, I know we were on the show, talking about recently, talking about Old. Well, not recently, but a little while ago, talking about Old, his latest feature, and talking about a lot of those aesthetics that he has, and perhaps how he has changed a lot of them or tweaked some of them. So I mean, those are my initial impressions that I'm interested in seeing. But do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I mean, to just answer that, I mean, like I said, it's true. I don't know exactly what he's gonna do with this new movie, but I think him just continuing with his style, and then maybe it really, to me, it really just depends on the story that matches his style. Because let's be honest, like, I specifically like going to see John Woo movies because of that style and what he did. But then you have the complete contrast, which is like Michael Mann, who specifically makes sure like the action is as real as possible, because these are dangerous situations that violence ensues. That's how he looks at it. And like when I go see a Michael Mann movie, for the most part, like he's using like real criminals or ex-cons. He's using like military people, or Israeli special forces, whatever, as like bodyguard. Like he's really trying to be as authentic as possible and try to make the action, the violence. It's because he's to him it's more like it's violence that ensues because of these dangerous situations. And that's why when I go see a Michael Mann movie like Heat, like Miami Vice, Collateral, whatever, Black Hat, or even back in the day Thief, like that's how he sets them up, and that's how he casts those movies. And it's like that's synonymous with like Michael Mann. That's what I love about Michael Mann. But then on the other hand, it's like I still love like what John Woo does, because he made action so visually artistic and aesthetically pleasing, colorful, and it's not just the slow motion; it's the music. Like I know some people, I don't know if you're I know you're probably not the biggest fan of Mission Impossible 2. I like Mission Impossible 2. I don't think it's the best one, but regardless of what you think of that movie,
It's fun.
There's a scene in that movie. I think it's better than a lot of the other ones. It's not the best, but there's a scene in that movie where I always remember. I'll tell people like it's so amazing. The part where it's so romantic too, like how like Tom Cruise is just seeing Tandy Newton, and like you see the flamenco dancers like that, and like, the dress is like the dress is going
scene, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You see how the dress, it's like red and it's going slow motion. It's just going like that's not even action, but it's so beautiful and romantic. Like only John Woo would do something like that. Like nobody else is doing stuff like no one else was really doing that. Like Michael Bay would do the whole 360. His thing was the signature 360-degree look, and like so he added that. That was his little feature, his little aesthetic. But John Woo, like he's known for like you jumping out, two guns blazing, or maybe you have the slow motion action, and then like the Hans Zimmer score, or whatever. It's just like really dramatic and operatic. But then also he, like I said, with Mission Impossible 2, even in the scenes that weren't action packed, he made it look so beautiful, and you felt the emotion. I felt the emotion of like those two characters. It's like, wow, he's that's a way to show it instead of just like, hey baby, like just trying to talk to a girl. It's like he was very good at visually showing like the love, like the romantic element of those two characters. And I think he could do. I feel like if he could even do like a non-action film, like maybe if he did a drama or something, and he added that style, it would be beautiful too. And like, but a lot of his stuff is heightened. It's heightened action, heightened style, and like one of the best movies of all time that we like, The Matrix. That's definitely influenced by like if you don't have John Woo, you don't have The Matrix. Like straight up, like it's just a fact. Like everything in that movie, what you think Bullet Time was cool, like that was an expansion of what John Woo does. So don't get it twisted. John Woo is like one of the most influential filmmakers out there, at least from a visual standpoint. Well, just like a movie. For action movies, visual standpoint, and just like this, just the style. I mean, it's just amazing. Like it's his own style.
To second that, I'll wrap up with this. Is just that in thinking of some of the past films that he's had, and like I said, going for me, I correlate a lot of his iconic work with films that I've seen from his filmography in the era of the 90s, the decade of the 90s. So like Hard Target, thinking back on a lot of those scenes where, I think it was a scene, and they show it, I believe, want to say it's in the trailer too, where they shoot an arrow or something, and the arrow like goes inches from like Jean-Claude Van Damme's face, like it just misses him or grazes him. Or if we're thinking of, you were talking about the scene in Mission Impossible, but maybe if you remember the scene from Face Off, which was like very symbolic, where John, and I'm brain farting on the actual characters' names, but when they actually had a face off, as the title suggests, where they were on each side of a mirror, and it was a
Exactly.
reflection of who they
Yep.
actually were. Like that was awesome.
Exactly. I mean, and that's why he was hired to, do that movie. I'm sure. And I heard they're trying to remake that movie. I'm like, why? Please don't.
Don't do it.
I heard they were trying to remake it. They'll remake everything, man. People probably eventually you probably see people remaking. I mean, I bet you someone will remake The Godfather one day.
Oh man, please don't.
I bet you someone will try to. Yeah, I mean, it's terrible, but but no, John Woo, he's definitely one of my favorites, and he's definitely influenced me. I know, like I said, it's become a term. Like you watch The Replacement Killers. That's how Antoine Fuqua was talking about the action. He's like, yeah, we're gonna have John Woo type action. Like when your name is synonymous, it's like his name is synonymous with like action and like that style as David Mamet, or even I'd say David Mamet is with like dialogue, or even Aaron Sorkin, you could say. And I guess even Tarantino to a certain extent with like dialogue and stuff. There's another guy for you. I mean, Tarantino was influenced by John Woo's films like crazy. So some of your even if you don't know about John Woo or he's not your favorite director, some of your favorite directors have him as one of their favorite directors. So
there you have it.
Because like that stuff he did, like you go watch Hard Boiled, The Killer. Hard Boiled has some ridiculous stuff in there, but it's just done so well. And The Killer also, man. It's like, but also it's because you feel for the characters too. You feel the emotion. It's not just we're killing a lot of people, whatever, like and shooting everyone. Like he makes you, the emotion is there too, and that's also kind of hard to do. That gets lost a lot of times in some of these action movies, but yeah, big up to John Woo.
Cool. So there you have it. This wraps up our this episode of This Week in Review. Before I hop into a couple of announcements, Jerome, I will punt it over to you, dude. Go ahead.
Yeah. So definitely thanks for watching, and we'll be back. We'll be back next week. I know Brandon, he'll talk about that. We have some announcements to make. But anyway, if you want to check me out, you can follow me on Twitter or on Instagram at JWBourgeois21. Got it right there. Boom. And, you can follow us also on the Movers and Shakers Unlimited Instagram, which is Movers Shakers Unlimited. And also we're on Twitter and Facebook at Move and Shake UNLTD. That's Move and Shake UNLTD. And also, if you want to be a fan and support us and just, get those benefits on Patreon, if you're a super fan, you can go to patreon.com, Movers Shakers Unlimited. And, definitely on YouTube, follow, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it, invite other people to subscribe. And, we're definitely going to be back again every week. And I'll just pass it back to you, Brandon, because I know you got some announcements to make about where you'll be next weekend.
For sure. So next week, if you guys have been taking a look at, the announcements that we had, is that I will be in Providence, Rhode Island, doing some moderating for some of the panels. So I will be on moderating duty. Just to give you a quick announcement, so I'll throw up the first one here. So here we go. So yes, on Saturday at 11 o'clock, I actually will be moderating the panel for Bill Diamond. So I'll put that up here now. So yes, Bill Diamond, Saturday at 11:30. Excuse me. So his Masters of Puppets panel. So you guys can check it out on that day. I actually put the exact location on my Instagram. So Brandon Choi _ENT. You can check it out there, or you can also, of course, go to the RhodeIsland.com website. You can check out our social media on Facebook and on Instagram for the further details on that. So that is happening Saturday at 11:30. And then I have another panel happen at 2 o'clock on the same day. So actually, let me pause that. So I will put up the wrong one here. Excuse me. Come back to that one. Sorry. So yes, on Saturday at 2 o'clock, it will be a reunion of the She's All That panel with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Rachel Lee Cook. So that is happening at 2 o'clock on Saturday, and you guys already got spoiled on the other panel happening to wrap up on Sunday. So it'll be none other than Walking Dead OG Chandler Riggs, who played Coral. For those of you that are, fans of The Walking Dead, yes, I will be moderating that panel at 11 o'clock on Sunday. So yes, jam packed. As I said, 11 o'clock with Bill Diamond on Saturday at 11:30, and then 2 o'clock, as I said, with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Rachel Lee Cook for 2 p.m. on Saturday, and then as you can see here, Sunday at 11 o'clock with Chandler Riggs. So yes, very jam-packed weekend to say the least. There won't be a This Week in Review happening on Saturday for obvious reasons, which you saw. But there are plans underway to have something done on Sunday. I will make sure, or say we will make sure, that we share that news of what will be happening to replace that week's show on Sunday. We're still putting together the details of what that would be, but we will definitely post it on our social media just to give you some details of what that would be specifically. But other than that, you can find me at Brandon Troy ENT, which you see down below on Twitter, and then Brandon Troy _ENT on Instagram. Other than that, guys, thank you guys so much for watching this week. Just as Jerome was saying, make sure you hit that. If you enjoy a lot of the content that we do here, hit that like and subscribe button. We are, on pace to hit, some of the goals that we're trying to, hit to close off this year. So, help us out. Anything will help us out in that regard, whether it's hitting the subscribe button or hitting that thumbs up button. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching again, guys. Be safe out there, and see you soon.
Peace out. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween tomorrow.
Indeed.